You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Marin Katusa, author of the New York Times bestseller, The Colder War, and CEO of Katusa Research. Welcome to the show, Marin.
Always a pleasure, Jim.
Last 2 days, some big gains in crude oil prices, but are they temporary?
Well, we got to put that comment in, to look at it relatively speaking. Big gains, yes, volatility's been insane. It moved down $2-3 in a couple of days, and it moved up $3-4 in a few days. But, relatively speaking, these are still minor. And have we seen the bottom? I don't think so. A year ago, I was in the Vancouver province stating that, we would see $40 to $45 U.S. per barrel by Labor Day 2015. We are right in that pocket. And I think for the next 6 to 12 months, Jim, the next shoe to hit is these hedges are going to be unwound. And at that point, companies are going to do desperation moves. And I think we'll probably see $35 oil, and then things will get very interesting. Because at that point, when the hedges unwind in November, December, and January, the companies won't be able to have that higher price that they preset from last year. So that's where I think the markets in the U.S. production will start to peter out. So that's something that I wrote about a year and a half ago, and I've just been waiting for the timing of it. And you have to look at these financial instruments and wait for them to expire. So November is a key date for me, November of 2015, to see how the hedges unwind and see what prices the forward curve is at now. So we've seen some big movements down on the forward curve. So I still see, have we seen the bottom in oil? I don't think so. I hope we have, because it makes my job a lot easier. Remember, I make my living from investing in these resource companies, but, I got to be a realist, and I think we got some more downward pressure.
Now, Saudi Arabia has a real interest to keep oil viable for people because they are facing pressure from new energy alternatives. The electric car, Tesla. Apparently, the Consumer Reports study or test of their latest model of Tesla, if you're willing to pay about 150,000 Canadian, is they gave it 103 out of 100.
It's you got to give credit to the efficiencies in the market. This is what I've been talking about for a year: innovation at a necessity, and not just the producers, but also the end users. Where the cars are getting lighter, they're becoming more efficient. They're using less oil, less gas, less copper, less materials. And you'll see that trend continue. And little by little, they'll make those cars also cheaper, Jim. So yes, they start at $150,000, but let's go 5-10 years out, they will get cheaper. Just like, look at the laptops and computers from 10 years ago. They're much cheaper today than they were 10 years ago. And more importantly, they are 10 times better product. Look at the cell phone, same story. So looking at all of these factors, I just say that things are going to become more efficient. Demand is growing, but supply is also growing. But the efficiencies of both the production and the end user are going to kick in that we haven't seen before also. So yes, in Saudi Arabia's best interest is, over 90% of the revenue of the nation comes from oil. But the reality is they can survive at $40 oil. Saudi Arabia can survive at $30 oil. Saudi Arabia can survive at $25 oil. What they'll have to do is rebudget their social funding programs. Just like Russia. People think that Putin is done. A year ago, we heard all this stuff, and I said, guys, if you understand the oil markets, you have to understand what cost are they producing in, and the ruble's been slaughtered. So we got to factor in these currency wars. You got to factor in their capital infrastructure costs, all of these factors, and also the amount of money the government uses from the oil industry to subsidize their social programs. So all of these factors play out, and I think that all of the governments are readjusting, including our Canadian governments. Alberta is going to come up with their own proposed legislation, but that was all written at $60 oil. Edmonton's bitumen cracked $18. The heavy oil, the bitumen, went for $18 a barrel. So the game has changed even for the Canadians.
Do you think Alberta is going to adjust their books, taking into account that $60 oil for them is now $18?
They have no choice but to do so. It'd be great to write a academic or theoretical prose on what it should be, but they have to adjust to what it is. And, you can write a tax code of how it should be at $60 or $70 or $80 oil, even $100 oil. The reality is some of these companies are getting $18, $19 oil. And you look at natural gas prices, they're under $2 in certain parts. So, we have to adjust to the realities here, and eventually the companies will shut down. Jobs will be lost. For every rig that shuts down, directly and indirectly, you see over 50 jobs be affected in Canada. These are very high-paying jobs. These aren't burger flipping jobs at McDonald's. These are $100,000 to $150,000 a year high-paying jobs that are being affected, and that will affect the bottom line of the province.
We'll have more with Marin Katusa right after this.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Marin Katusa, author of the New York Times bestseller, The Colder War, and CEO of Katusa Research. What kind of an impact are we going to see on energy and prices and so on with this mass migration that's going on with people fleeing conflicts in the Middle East and Africa, heading to Europe and landing in countries like Greece and Italy that can ill afford to look after their own people, let alone thousands of newcomers?
Well, you're seeing what certain of the European countries are saying, sorry, get out. They're not going to allow it. We look at it as a very Canadian perspective where we bend over backwards to help all nations. Doesn't matter creed or color. In Europe, it's a bit different. The people are broke. In certain regions, you have over 25% unemployment. And there's also the religious factor that nobody talks about, where you have a predominantly Catholic country or Orthodox country. The Christians don't exactly historically get along with the Muslims coming in. And you will see more of that conflict. You will see a lot of issues come in. And you've seen it happen in France already. You've seen it happen in Romania and Bulgaria. You're going to see more of it in the Slavic countries. Let's not forget what happened in the former Yugoslavia between, the Serbs and the Muslims. That was a Orthodox versus Muslim conflict. There's a lot more to it, but, there are still those tensions there. I travel a lot, just got back from Europe, and the average person in the bar, in the coffee shop, in the government, I'm doing a project there, so I have to get some permits. They're not pleased with this. They're not happy. So we have to take off our Canadian lens on how we look at things and put yourself in the shoes of a European that is struggling day by day, and now they're going to have to deal with more problems. I think it's going to be a tough go.
A lot of nationalist, socialist parties are cropping up saying we just want our own people. We don't want foreigners. And when I say national socialists, fascists, that's what the Nazi Party was. Are we seeing that raising its ugly face again?
You see a little bit of it. I wouldn't say it's the majority. I really hope it doesn't get to that, because that's just awful for mankind. But it's getting really awkward. You can see the tension in the capitals. You can see the unemployment rates. It feels different. I hit 7 countries in 22 days in Europe and even in the UK. Interestingly enough, even in London, I've seen a change in the sentiment between the people that I know there about this. Whereas we take the Canadian view of like, let's help. People are like, we need to help ourselves.
Well, Canada and the U.S. have been built on immigration. I know illegal immigration in the U.S. is a big election issue, but in Canada, if they find you here without a passport, they try to boot you out.
Yeah, well, Donald Trump made it an issue, and unfortunately for the American media, this whole campaign is turning into a giant reality show, and the sad thing, Jim, is it's actually working because the ratings are higher than they've ever been. So, if it takes that for people to come out to vote, it really shows the sad state of affairs of American politics and where democracy has, whether we want to call it evolved or de-evolved, I don't know which way it's gone, but it's quite fascinating to see that someone like Donald Trump can create that much sensation and be the front runner, which is quite shocking to me.
Well, using the reality TV thing, which Kardashian is going to be his vice presidential candidate?
Maybe what was his name? Jenner.
Caitlyn.
Caitlyn, there you go.
I mean, Trump's latest trick is having women in the audience come up and pull his hair to show that it's real.
Yeah. Oh, he knows. He's been in the limelight for 20 years? He knows how to work the audience. He knows how to work the media. He knows how to work the cameras. And, unfortunately, the best candidate isn't the one who's most charismatic and knows how to manipulate the media. And right now, I don't care. I don't have a skin in this fight, or, I'm Canadian. I'm proud to be Canadian. I just watch it, and it's almost like, you read the headlines in the morning and you just shake your head and go, wow, just wow.
Well, I know some people who say Trump, is kind of a goofball, but you don't become a 10 billionaire by being stupid.
Well, hold on. If you look at the amount of bankruptcies he's been linked to, only a country like America would allow such a thing. So, yes, he's done very well, and whether he's worth $4 billion or $5 billion or $10 billion, I guess it doesn't really matter. He acts like the world's richest man. And I find him quite entertaining. I got nothing against Donald Trump, but, it's no secret about the bankruptcies and how have the investors done with him. And that's something the media hasn't caught on yet. And if I was to write an article, I would go, well, how is Trump taking care of his shareholders and investors, and how would that relate to the general population in America?
Does he listen to advice, or does he always march to his own drummer?
Who knows? I really don't know. So it's going to be interesting. And you almost hear nothing about Hillary. And I think from a Democrat standpoint, this is a dream come true. Yeah,
somebody said if all the skeletons in her closet fell out, you could play a lot of tunes on their ribs.
Perhaps, but, I put my money where my mouth is. A good friend of mine is adamant that it's going to be a Republican, and I believe it's going to be a Democrat, and I know the trends, and I know all the history of it. So we put a nice $500 bottle of wine on the tilt. So I'll be, right after the election, I'll tell you who had the good night and who had the bad night.
And also, the president does not have the kind of power you think. I mean, look, it took Obama 5 years to get a budget passed.
Yeah, exactly.
So if there's resistance in the lower houses, then the president is pretty well handcuffed.
Correct.
Unless he pushes the button.
You can get the all-time veto in there, and, Obama's been pulling out the veto card quite a bit because he's seen exactly what you've mentioned. Plus,
you have to appease all these different factions in the U.S., the farmers, the miners.
The lobbyists.
The lobbyists. I mean, that's Canada has nothing like that show.
No, that's right. That's who runs America, is figure out where the lobby power is.
So I know he says, I won't owe any money to anybody because I can fund my own campaign, but how does the country really run? Is it the CEOs of the major corporations, or is it the Congress?
I think it's a hybrid of both.
Marin, anything else you want to throw in today?
That's good. I just think tell investors to be patient, pick right, sit tight. If you have cash, you definitely want to start looking at these markets. You see some big, smart investors in the U.S. Guys like Carl Icahn are starting to come into the resources, and, they're coming in a big way. So, like I said, I don't know if we're at the bottom, but prices are sure looking interesting right now.
Marin, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
My guest has been Marin Katusa, author of the New York Times bestseller, The Colder War, and CEO of Katusa Research. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. Check out our popular YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.